The Magic Warrior. King Hanh waited anxiously for news. Invading troops were closing in on the northern border of his kingdom, Van Lan. Although he'd prepared 3 years for this invasion, he still waited for the special sign promised by the Dragon Emperor. He remembered how 3 years ago he'd met with his advisors to discuss the growing threat posed by the neighboring country of An. One advisor had counseled, if they send troops, we will be forced to fight. Thus far, however, they have made only verbal threats. Rather than make full-scale preparations for war, let us first train a special corps of generals and soldiers ready to mobilize in case of an attack. Another advisor said, the king of An is a fierce warrior. If he decides to invade, I fear for our kingdom. Our people have lived in peace for centuries and do not know the ways of war. The soldiers of An possess many kinds of deadly weapons. Your Highness, we must turn to Dragon Emperor for assistance. The king had a special altar built that was 30 feet long. He made incense offerings, and for 3 days and nights fasted and slept on the ground by the altar. Then he began to pray, invoking the name of Dragon Emperor. Black clouds gathered in the sky. There was a crash of thunder, after which a guard came running to inform the king that an old man, standing more than 15 feet tall, was outside requesting an audience with the king. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows. The king himself went outside to welcome the old man. The man who'd been singing and dancing while waiting for the guard's return suddenly grew silent. When the king offered him tea, he made no gesture to accept. King Hanh addressed the silent stranger. Most respected sir, the king of An is planning to invade Van Lan. We do not know how our kingdom will fare. Please allow us to ask your counsel in this matter. The old man gazed a long moment at his hand and then said, An troops will not invade for another 3 years. How can we best prepare to defend ourselves? The old man answered, train a special force of skilled warriors. No doubt you've already thought of that. When the first An troops are spotted along the border, seek a general from among the people who can lead you to sudden victory. I cannot reveal beforehand who that person will be. Do not discriminate against the one who promises victory, regardless of whether he is rich or poor, young or old. River God will assist me in this matter. Having spoken, the old man floated up into the air and disappeared among the clouds. The king understood then that he'd been speaking to Dragon Emperor himself. 3 years passed. The first troops had been spotted. The special force of warriors was dispatched to the border. At the same time, delegates were sent throughout the country to seek the general who would promise sudden victory. Days passed with no word. Then one day, one of the delegates returned saying he had an urgent message. The king and his advisors listened to all he had to say. Your Majesty, people throughout the kingdom have expressed their utmost faith in your ability to repel the invaders. When we said we were seeking a general from amongst the people, everyone claimed they were ignorant of military affairs and placed their trust in your warriors. Discouraged, we continued our search. Then a strange thing happened in the tiny village of Fudong. When we read your decree, a young woman approached us and insisted we followed her back to her home. When we entered her hut, we didn't see anyone but a toddler playing alone on the bed. He looked straight at us and said, "Honourable sirs, what message do you bear from the king?" At first, we didn't want to waste time talking to a child, but the woman prevented us from leaving, saying, 3 years ago, I gave birth to the child you see here. For 3 years, he did nothing but lie on his bed. He never sat up and he never made a sound, not even mama or papa. But today, when he heard us talking about the arrival of the king's delegates, he sat right up and said, "Mother, go and invite the king's delegates to come to speak with me." It seemed a miracle, so I wasted no time in bringing you here. What do you suppose it means? The delegate continued. We turned to listen to the child, and this is what he told us. "Please, sirs, return at once to the capital. Ask the king to make an iron horse that is 15 feet high, an iron sword 10 feet long, and an iron helmet fit for a giant. I will need those 3 things to turn back the invaders. Bring them back to me as soon as possible. And please remember, they must be made of iron, not copper." One of the king's advisors burst out laughing. "How preposterous. Your messengers are wasting your precious time with children's fancies." But King Hong did not laugh. Instead, he asked, "Gentlemen, do you know what iron is?" The child said the horse, sword, and helmet must be made of iron, not copper. Another advisor said, "Your Majesty, I know what iron is. It's a very special kind of metal that is unusually hard. Copper is solid, but nothing compared with iron. Last year, a foreign trader who is a friend of mine sent me a small iron knife as a gift. If you allow it, I will fetch it at once." When the advisor returned, he pulled the knife from its sheath. A chill ran down the spines of the other advisors when they saw how smooth and shiny the knife was. The king took the knife and struck a copper urn with it. A large dent was left in the urn. The king examined the knife. There was not even a scratch upon it. The king said, "This iron is indeed a special metal. If we could acquire it, we could make weapons stronger than any known before. But where can we find more of this iron?" Just at that moment, a guard entered to announce that a messenger from the river god desired an audience with the king. This man too was old, with a long white beard and bushy eyebrows. When he was ushered in, he did not wait to be addressed before speaking. "Your Majesty, I can help you procure the iron you and your generals seek. This stone rod, which serves as my staff, will lead you to places where iron is buried deep in the earth. Wave it over the ground, and you will feel a tug when you're in the right places. There you must dig until you find the iron. The iron you unearth, it will be mixed with other elements, which you must separate by heating the iron in a blazing furnace. Once it's been purified, you will be able to make tools and weapons." The king handed the walking stick to the king. The old man handed the walking stick to the king, who respectfully accepted it. He invited the man to stay for a banquet in his honor, but the old man declined. So the king asked his guards to accompany the man out of the palace. When they reached the river shore, The old man turned into a golden turtle and disappeared beneath the water. Thanks to the stone rod, iron was found. Workers dug day and night and heated the metal to filter out the impurities. It took 2 months to manufacture the horse, sword, and helmet requested by the child. When they were completed, the king arranged for them to be transported by river barge to Fudong village. Then the king ordered his workers to refine and mold more of the iron into swords, 30,000 in all for his soldiers. In Fudong village, the child turned to his mother and said, "The king's barge will soon be here. Please cook me a pot of rice. I must prepare for battle." His mother cooked a large pot of rice, was astonished when he ate it all and asked for more. Over the next few days, he ate as much as 100 men. All the families in the village were kept busy bringing him rice, vegetables, and cakes. His appetite seemed endless, but no one resented bringing him food because they knew he was a special envoy from Dragon Emperor who would save their country. Neighboring villages contributed food as well and cloth to sew clothes for him. A pair of pants lasted him no more than 1 or 2 days before he outgrew them. The same day the barge arrived in Fudong, the king received news that the invading troops from Han had crossed the border and defeated the king's special forces. The invaders were flooding into Van Lang as the people scattered in terror. It was after sunset before the iron horse, sword, and helmet were unloaded from the barge. The delegates made their way to the child's hut and discovered it surrounded by great sacks of rice. The child asked his mother and the villagers to prepare a feast to share with the king's delegates. Even after everyone had eaten, the child continued eating. He ate all night long. Only when the first cock crowed did he put down his bowl. With a great stretch, he stood up. He was more than 20 feet tall. He put on his helmet and grabbed his iron sword. He jumped onto the iron horse and exclaimed in a voice as deep as thunder, "I am the magic warrior sent by goddess Ao Ko and Dragon Emperor to save our people." The iron horse stirred as if alive. Sparks of fire flew from its flaring nostrils. It reared back and pierced the skies with a cry. The magic warrior galloped off to meet the advancing Han troops. When the magic warrior reached the foot of Trao Song Mountain, he found the soldiers of both sides engaged in heavy combat. Van Lang's soldiers were holding their own, armed with shining new swords of iron. The magic warrior, his sword flashing, galloped straight into the ranks of the invaders. Many dropped dead, including the king of Han. Others were surrounded and forced to surrender. The magic warrior chased the fleeing Han troops past Viet Sok Mountain until he was certain they would not return. Then he turned and galloped straight up the mountain. He and the iron horse were never seen again, though traces of the horse's mighty footprints can still be seen all the way up the mountain. King Hung rejoiced at the news of victory. He only regretted that he's not been able to meet the magic warrior in person. He ordered an altar to be built at the foot of Viet Sok Mountain so that the people of Van Lang would never forget the magic warrior of Fudong. The king knew a 20-foot tall warrior who rode a fire-spitting iron horse could not remain on earth amongst ordinary mortals. But though the magic warrior returned to his place amongst the gods, the soldiers of Van Lang had something to remember him by. Their iron weapons would help them to protect the kingdom from future invasions. In that way, the magic warrior was still among them. And that's the end of the magic warrior.